Chapter 41. When Garrett opened the box beneath the bookshelf, a dim light spilled out, illuminating a thin layer of coins. He carefully poured them out, sorting them by color, and meticulously counted each one once, twice, 10 gold coins, 8 silver coins among the gold. There was one that stood out. Garrett picked it up, examining it closely. 9 of the 10 gold coins featured a beautiful woman's face wearing a crown on the obverse side, with intertwined roses on the reverse. A familiar sight, likely from their own country's currency. It seemed to be a depiction of a queen on the front and presumably the royal emblem on the back, but the last one had a different mark. The obverse displayed a bearded man with a crown, while the reverse showed a double-headed eagle with outspread wings. Different emblem, different face. Considering the rose pattern on the reverse of the other silver coins, this distinctive one might be from a foreign land. As for how it was left there, its value, or whether it could be spent directly, Garrett searched his memory but found no answers. Regardless, these 10 gold and 8 silver coins constituted the final savings left by his predecessor's father. Buried under the bed and stowed beneath the bookshelf, he was instructed not to touch them unless absolutely necessary. The reason for the distinction between gold and silver was the concern that a young child, weak in strength, might recklessly spend gold coins and attract trouble. How much should he take out this time? After careful consideration, Garrett put back 8 gold coins into the box, including the one with the double-headed eagle, and returned 3 silver coins. He meticulously reset the box, cleared the traces on the floor, pocketed the money pouch, and darted out of the house towards the paper and pen store in Heartland City. Garrett only remembered one shop that sold paper and pens. The store was near the city lord's mansion square, about 200 meters south along the main street, a prime location within the entire city. Carriages with family emblems adorned the bustling streets, gentlemen and ladies passing by now and then. On each side of the store entrance hung 2 lanterns, illuminating half of the street. Surprisingly, there was even a doorman under the lantern's white shirt, suspenders, holding a board about a foot wide and over 2 meters tall, laboring to put it up for the shop. When Garrett arrived, the doorman glanced at him with surprise. His eyes swept over Garrett, who wore a visibly altered linen shirt, pants splattered with mud, and a patched backpack. His lips moved slightly and he placed the board down, then approached to open the door for Garrett. Stepping into the shop, a waist-high wooden counter divided the entire storefront into 2 sections. Inside the counter lazily sat a young attendant, white shirt, black waistcoat, a black bow tie neatly secured under his neck, wearing a face that said, "Don't bother me. I'm about to finish my shift." Apart from the counter, there was nothing else on the outside. Inside, behind the attendant, cabinets displayed various scrolls, quill pens, ink bottles, and stationery boxes, a wall adorned with a myriad of items. Garrett craned his neck to look at the scrolls. The attendant raised his head for a swift glance, lazily asking, "What do you want to buy?" "Paper." Garrett managed to say one word before being interrupted. The attendant didn't even lift an eyelid but continued, "Parchment paper, 2 silver coins each, plain paper, 4 silver coins each. How many do you need?" "So expensive?" Garrett was astonished. 2 silver coins for parchment paper could be understood since it's made from animal skin, but 4 silver coins for plain paper? Was this some sort of high-quality paper? This couldn't be parchment from the sanctum, could it? No, that wasn't the main point. If regular plain paper cost twice as much as parchment, how did the paper-making industry survive without going bankrupt? The young attendant rolled his eyes impatiently. Rather than answering, he crossed his arms and arrogantly added, "Minimum purchase of 10 sheets. 1 sheet for 2 silver coins, 10 sheets for 20 silver coins. Or 2 gold coins. How many sheets would it take to copy an entire book? Would 1,000 be enough?" If calculated, just for this purpose, it would cost 200 gold coins. Apart from the alchemical apparatus and surgical tools in that box, selling off the house, furniture, everything in the house wouldn't likely be enough. Garrett calculated with the little hope he had and asked tentatively, "Anything cheaper?" "Cheaper?" The attendant raised an eyebrow. Just as he was about to say something, a swift elderly man rushed out from the inner part of the shop. "We have plenty. What kind do you need?" The elderly man appeared more extravagantly dressed than the young attendant. His coat was adorned with a velvety border, and the buttons on his rotund belly shimmered, almost ready to pop off. He glared at the attendant and then instantly put on a smiling face. "We have all kinds of goods in this little shop. The cheapest one is paper from Valwick for silver coins per sheet. Slightly whiter, smoother ones from Northumbria. Official documents paper, 1 gold coin per sheet. The paper you heard before is regularly ordered by the magic tower outside the city. It's said to improve the success rate of copying scrolls even better than parchment, only 4 silver coins per sheet, quite a bargain. So, it was specialized paper for copying magical scrolls. Garrett suddenly realized though papermaking had become common, high-quality paper wasn't easy to produce, not to mention magical paper representing tangible power in his previous life. Even top-notch papers could cost a hefty sum, selling thousands for just 1 or 2 gold coins. How many sheets for a gold coin? The young attendant sneered, but the elderly man didn't find the question too mundane. He continued with a smile, 25 sheets, absolutely no discount. Garrett swiftly calculated. 25 sheets for 1 gold coin? For silver coins, 1,000 sheets would cost 160 gold coins or 16 gold coins. He had 10 gold coins, 8 silver coins, and 7 copper coins. But would 1,000 sheets be enough for a child learning to read and write? Definitely not enough, right? These days, reading and writing seem to be the privileges of the upper class. Garrett sighed. After the moment of reflection, he resumed negotiating the price. Would buying more get me a discount? For 1 tale, that's 20 pieces, 7 gold coins, and 5 silver coins. And we deliver right to your door. Pens? Ink? Quill pens, 2 silver coins for a goose feather pen that can be sharpened at least 20 times. Refined goose feather pen for 4 silver coins, can be sharpened at least 50 times, comes with a sharpening knife. Regular writing ink, 2 silver coins for an ounce, 5 ounces for a large bottle at 8 silver coins. They were really good at doing business. Garrett chuckled wryly. This pricing strategy and attracting customers reminded him of household packs, wholesale, and combination deals in supermarkets from his past life. He considered his needs and took out his wallet. I'll take 4 sheets of regular writing paper and 1 refined goose feather pen. I only have 2 gold coins and 5 silver coins. Could I get another bottle of the large ink? The paper, pen, and ink totaled 2 gold coins and 8 silver coins. As soon as Garrett made his request, demanding a 10% discount, the young attendant, watching from the side, couldn't help but scoff and sneer. If you can't afford it, then don't buy. Do you even have gold coins? Chapter 42. Henry. The old man frowned. While scolding, he couldn't help but shift his gaze, covertly sizing up Garrett. Garrett's hand paused while undoing the wallet strap. It seemed the old man was suspicious of him. It wasn't surprising. Considering his attire neither noble nor servant-like, not quite fitting any known role, it seemed like he was spending his own money for himself. The mismatch between his status and income would naturally raise eyebrows anywhere, though he could withstand scrutiny. There was no need to invite unnecessary trouble. Garrett stayed silent, continuing to dig coins from his wallet. 1 gold coin, 2 gold coins. The old man's eyes widened, immediately trying to dissuade him. Sir, you're joking. A small business like mine, selling so cheap might mean running at a loss. If it's inconvenient for you, how about buying 2 small bottles first? He picked up a gold coin, inspecting it left and right, blowing on it and even biting it. Garrett was surprised. Even at this age, still biting coins. Aren't you afraid of damaging your teeth? Moreover, these coins were buried in a box underground for so many years. After touching them, I wouldn't dare handle food without washing my hands, and here you are putting it straight into your mouth. Intestinal infections, diarrhea, vomiting, fever. Garrett's mind raced, staring at the coins with increasing incredulity. The old man's expression also turned peculiar, body leaning forward, arms spread out, unconsciously assuming a defensive stance in the midst of this tension. With a sudden exertion and inexplicably gasping for air, the entire coin went down his throat. The old man's face contorted instantly. He gasped, grabbing his throat, his eyes bulging like a frog stuck. The coin got stuck. Choking. Garrett was shocked. The young assistant beside him froze, flustered, rushing to pat the old man's back. Sir, Mr. Hogan. The patting was ineffective. The plump old man rocked back and forth, bent forward, coughed a few times, quickly turning purple. The young assistant held on to him, attempting to open his mouth, clearing his throat. Meanwhile, he shouted outside, Quick! Get the apothecary. Understood. Outside the shop door, the boy replied, darting off normally. When someone fell ill or got hurt, they should summon a priest. But wasn't the apothecary next door? When unable to afford a priest or when the priest was too busy, they'd manage by calling the apothecary. The treatment might be slower, involving administering medicine or something similar. The young assistant yelled and continued trying to save the old man. Unexpectedly, Garrett leapt over the counter. "What are you doing?" The young assistant shouted. He wanted to help the old man but also wanted to drive Garrett away, causing chaos. He couldn't free up his hands, only shouting loudly, "What are you doing? Get out! Get out!" Ignoring him, Garrett rushed forward, shoving the young assistant aside, enveloping the old man from behind. At least he was a first-level warrior compared to knights. Picking on shop staff was his strong suit. Thrown by him, the young assistant slammed into the cabinet behind, curled up, shouting, "Thief! Someone's stealing!" "Who? Who?" Footsteps echoed. A middle-aged man stormed in, a glass bottle in one hand, a wooden spoon in the other. Garrett presumed he was the apothecary. Right after, the boy rushed in, searching for sticks on the floor, simultaneously yelling at Garrett, "What are you doing? Release Mr. Hogan." Garrett didn't pay them any mind. With one leg in front and the other behind, he locked his hands around the plump old man, exerting a sudden downward force. The plump body slid, directly sitting on Garrett's right thigh, pressed forward. "What are you doing?" the apothecary yelled. He wasn't young and couldn't leap over the counter like Garrett. He could only rush, desperately trying to feed the old man. Running and panting, he shouted, "Let go of him! Why are you squeezing his waist when he's choking?" As Garrett was making preparations, the coin slipped. It's the worst dealing with overweight people, needing an extra person to lift them off a bed. It's difficult to perform chest compressions, and during abdominal surgery, when others make an incision, they'd see organs, but with him, it's just layers of fat. Even for anesthesia, the dosage needs a complete reassessment. An anesthetist has to be extra careful. Look at this now, the Heimlich maneuver just slipped off. The store clerk and apothecary continued shouting. Garrett, frustrated, roared, "Shut up! You, come out!" The boy glanced around, finally grabbing a door latch, ducking under the counter barrier. Garrett shouted, "I'm saving him!" His left fist moved up, the right hand following suit, pressing against the plump man's sternum. Taking a deep breath, he exerted force again. Once, twice, bang! The door latch hit hard. Garrett couldn't dodge in time, so he slightly leaned his head aside, taking the hit on his left shoulder. In pain, his arms suddenly surged with strength, fiercely thrusting the old man's chest third time. Cough! Cough, cough, cough. The old man suddenly started coughing violently, a thunderous bout of coughs. Then suddenly he opened his mouth and spat something out with a clang. It landed on the table, spinning under the lamp's light, sparkling gold. Garrett relaxed all over. Releasing his arms, he raised his right hand to massage his left shoulder, simultaneously glowering at the boy. The second stick wielded by the boy froze halfway, his right hand held high, stunned. Can it work like this? The apothecary froze in place, dropping the glass bottle. It shattered with a crack. Cough, cough, cough. Huff, huff, huff. The old man coughed for a while, finally catching his breath, turning his head as he glanced over, seeing the frozen boy holding the stick and Garrett massaging his shoulder. His gaze froze on the spot. The apothecary disregarded everything. Why did this work? When someone's choking, can you save them by hugging their chest? Please, tell me. I'll pay you. I'll give you everything. He began frantically searching his pockets, money pouches, gold chains, even trying to tear off buttons from his coat, but one pull and nothing budged. Garrett sweated, busy with casting a healing spell on his left shoulder. He could only stretch his left hand. Trying to pull the apothecary, you don't have to. It's just a small technique, very simple. Damn it. I pressed the diaphragm. Who told you to hug the chest? This isn't clear, it's harmful. The pain in his shoulder finally subsided. Garrett freed up his hand, starting to explain to the apothecary. Under the lamp, he watched as the middle-aged apothecary nodded repeatedly, bending from a 5-degree lean to 10 degrees. Then gradually to 15, the plump old man opened his mouth, sweat beaded on his chubby forehead. Why did he doubt the other's money earlier? Why suspect the origin of that coin? Now he had offended a legitimate healer. Even the neighboring apothecary would listen respectfully to their lessons. Now the other party, not even sparing a glance at him, was busy chatting with the apothecary. The old man reacted quickly. As Garrett paused in his explanation, he immediately bowed deeply, showing respect. The fat on his belly creased deeply. "Respected healer, thank you for saving my life, and please forgive the rudeness of my little shop." Garrett quickly stopped teaching to assist. The old man followed his lead, rising with his support, hand on his waist, loudly commanding the young shop assistant, "Roger, bring what the healer needs. Frank, get a dozen of the finest paper, no, make it 2. And fetch 10 quill pens, 2 large bottles of ink. Hurry!" A doorkeeper and a shop assistant, shouted by him, rushed back and forth, not touching the ground. This time, the one causing chaos by blocking was Garrett. "No need. I can't afford these." "How can I let you pay?" The old man laughed heartily, thumping his chest, making a bang-bang sound. "Respected healer, you're my savior. How can I not pay for your treatment fees?" "But for applying the Heimlich maneuver, the treatment fee, well, in such cases, it doesn't take much, maybe a few dozen coins at most for such a simple operation." "No buts. This shop is mine. If I owe this old man's life, isn't it worth a few pieces of paper? At least exchange it for normal paper. Magic paper is too expensive." "Then add 2 more batches of normal paper." "Roger. Pack everything and deliver it to the healer's home." One doorkeeper and one shop assistant, directed by him, ran back and forth as Garrett sighed, "Please don't trouble yourself. It's just a simple technique." "Damn it. I pressed the diaphragm. Who told you to hug the chest? This isn't clear. It's harmful." Finally, the pain in his shoulders subsided. Garrett freed up his hand, starting to explain to the apothecary. Under the lamp, he watched as the middle-aged apothecary nodded repeatedly, bending from a 5-degree lean to 10 degrees. Then gradually to 15. The plump old man opened his mouth, sweat beaded on his chubby forehead. He doubted the other's money earlier? Why suspect the origin of that coin? Now he had offended a legitimate healer. Even the neighboring apothecary would listen respectfully to their lessons. Now the other party, not even sparing a glance at him, was busy chatting with the apothecary. The old man reacted quickly as Garrett paused in his explanation. He immediately bowed deeply, showing respect. The fat on his belly creased deeply. "Respected healer, thank you for saving my life. And please forgive the rudeness of my little shop." Garrett quickly stopped teaching to assist. The old man followed his lead, rising with his support, hand on his waist, loudly commanding the young shop assistant, "Roger, bring what the healer needs. Frank, get a dozen of the finest paper, no, make it 2. And fetch 10 quill pens, 2 large bottles of ink. Hurry!" A doorkeeper and a shop assistant, shouted by him, rushed back and forth, not touching the ground. This time, the one causing chaos by blocking was Garrett. "No need. I can't afford these. How can I let you pay?" The old man laughed heartily, thumping his chest, making a bang-bang sound. "Respected healer, you're my savior. How can I not pay for your treatment fees? But for applying the Heimlich maneuver, the treatment fee. Well, in such cases, it doesn't take much, maybe a few dozen coins at most for such a simple operation." "No buts. This shop is mine. If I owe this old man's life, isn't it worth a few pieces of paper? At least exchange it for normal paper. Magic paper is too expensive. Then add 2 more batches of normal paper. Roger, pack everything and deliver it to the healer's home." One doorkeeper and one shop assistant, directed by him, ran back and forth as Garrett sighed, "Please don't trouble yourself. It's just a simple technique." Chapter 43. A heap of goods lay before Garrett. His square table at home was brimming with items, leaving almost no space. 2 reams of paper official documents. Perhaps without a reference, Garrett couldn't distinguish between them, but he could tell the quality was much better than the hemp paper he had brought with him that day. 2 rolls of magical parchment paper, soft, pristine, and smooth, though it didn't match the A4 paper from his previous life. Compared to the pages he had seen during the day, it was quite impressive. 10 feather quills, finely sharpened at the tip with straight and long shafts. Accompanied by a small penknife, Garrett tested its edge and found it quite sharp. 2 bottles of ink, each a 5-ounce bottle, about 3 times the size of the hero's ink from his past life. They seemed like they'd last for at least half a year. Garrett took stock of his haul. If the cheaper paper was the official one, priced at 1 gold coin per sheet, that would be 20 gold coins. The 2 rolls of magical paper, one at $20 and the other at $25 for 25 sheets, totaling 400 gold coins. Refined goose quills at 4 silver coins each, the large ink bottles at 8 silver coins each, together totaling 5 gold coins and 6 silver coins. Adding it all up, the cost of this treatment came to 425 gold coins. He wondered about the profit margin of that stationery shop. Even if it was cost price, the old man had just spent over 200 gold coins. But then again, how much would a spell like healing lethal wounds be priced at in this world? Scratching his head, Garrett pondered. He wasn't entirely clear on the answer to this question, but in the web novels he'd read before, healing lethal wounds seemed to be a 4th, 5th, or 6th level divine magic. Anyway, it definitely started at over 1,000 gold coins. Commoners, even the ordinary middle class, couldn't afford it. He realized it was much the same in his previous life. If throwing money could save a life, most people would go all out when faced with life-threatening illnesses. A family spending hundreds of thousands in the ICU wasn't uncommon if one choked on gold coins. Luck might let them swallow them. If not, an esophageal obstruction could lead to instant death. Previously, his immediate aid might not have saved an entire life, but it certainly salvaged half of one. So, a shopkeeper thanking him with a few items from their shop was acceptable, right? After much mental reassurance, Garrett finally felt at ease. He looked at the stacks of white paper on the table, his smile growing wider bit by bit, and suddenly he clenched his fists up high. Yahoo, money, no, paper and quills. No worries about transcribing books anymore. No, not just books, even scrolls won't be a problem from now on. Garrett. Someone was knocking outside. The voice sounded familiar. Garrett got up and opened the door, finding 2 familiar faces. One was his immediate superior's superior, Knight Flynn of their unit, and the other was Sir Westlow, who had saved a life yesterday afternoon at the military camp. Garrett invited them in. Knight Flynn glanced at the table and couldn't help but exclaim, "Young Garrett, you struck it rich. So many writing tools?" Garrett had to explain his earlier stroke of luck. Before he could finish, he noticed both Knight Flynn and Sir Westlow exchanging looks, their expressions somewhat odd. After a moment, Knight Flynn forced a smile and handed over a small money pouch. "Your salary for the month, a little extra. Captain said your pay will be based on your immediate leader for now, and a raise will be applied once your rank goes up. No need for duty, just come by the camp when you have time." Garrett nodded vigorously. No duty meant he didn't have to work as promised by Knight Noland yesterday, and a pay raise? Unexpectedly delightful. Glancing at the table, Garrett thought he'd better hurry and write the battlefield first aid manual. If that spread through the camp, it could save many lives. He took the money pouch. Knight Flynn stepped back, and Sir Westlow followed suit. His embarrassment visibly apparent, he scratched his head and struggled for several seconds before producing a silk money pouch. Thanks for yesterday. I should have given this to you yesterday, but it got late and you left early." "No need." Garrett reflexively stepped back, glancing around. Offering something, especially something he needed, was one thing, but handing over money was too shocking. Especially after treating him yesterday and today, suddenly giving him money. It felt like receiving a patient's red packet. Would the medical department come after him? Garrett's heart raced. It took him a while to realize this was a different world. No hospitals, no medical departments. Oddly, that realization saddened him. Seeing his troubled expression, Knight Flynn took the money pouch and stuffed it into Garrett's hands, insisting, "Don't refuse. Sir Westlow's family is burdened with 2 daughters married this year and donations owed to the temple. These 10 gold coins are his all-out effort. The rest he can only give bit by bit later." 10 gold coins? That much? Seemed like the savings left by the original owner were about this much. Wasn't the original owner's father also a captain? Garrett slowly opened his mouth, thought for a moment, then quickly shut it. From his memory, the original owner's father came from elsewhere, with no roots in Heartland City. Houses, armor, weapons, everything cost money. Even this box of books was exorbitantly priced, enough to drain someone's savings for years. In any case, 10 gold coins was a lot. A whole lot. He shook his head repeatedly, pushing back hard. Healing the sick and saving lives is just something one should do. Besides, yesterday the temple called me for questioning, and Uncle Westlow, you went along. That was worth much more than any money. The two knights exchanged glances and smiled. Finally, Knight Flynn stepped forward, thrusting the money pouch into Garrett's hand, grasping his fist tightly. While squeezing it, he said, "If you don't take it, we won't dare to come to you for treatment in the future. No matter what happens." Patience? Garrett's spirits lifted. Knight Flynn pondered for a moment. "You mentioned yesterday that treatment for Sir Roman's wrist shouldn't have been that way. Following your method, can it be healed?" Garrett's face fell instantly. Knight Flynn shook his head vigorously. Not him, not him. Do you remember Sir Baron? The city's best archer 3 years ago got a cut on his wrist here. Knight Flynn gestured at his wrist. During a fierce battle, he could only bandage his wrist and fight with a sword. The next day, he couldn't exert force or draw his bow. Could that kind of injury be healed with your method? It sounded like a tendon injury, but not necessarily. Maybe a nerve or vascular injury, Garrett pondered. I need to examine it. If it's what I think, it might require a bunch of equipment. No problem. I'll have him come see you tomorrow. Chapter 44. Two knights hastily bid their farewells and departed. Garrett spent another day poring over books and, come evening, as soon as he reached home, he spotted Sir Flynn and Sir Westlow, who had visited the day before, along with a scruffy middle-aged man waiting at the door. Besides these three, an unexpected visitor persisted at the doorway, insisting on staying put with a persistent and cheerful demeanor. Before Garrett could approach, he noticed a person with an unusually large, shiny bald head. That stood out conspicuously, the bishop. "Oh, Garrett, you're back." The bald-headed bishop greeted casually, waving his hand without any sense of formality. He then casually grabbed and pulled someone out from between the two knights. "Do you want to heal him?" "Garrett, could you maybe tell me who this person is first?" He stepped forward to greet them while silently seeking clarification from the two knights. As he got closer, he caught a very familiar scent emanating from the middle-aged man. "This scent feels familiar," Garrett sniffed, suddenly taken aback. "Do you smoke? Is there tobacco in this world? Has the age of exploration begun? Rubber, quinine, coffee, cocoa, and even the coca plant beloved and despised by doctors have all made their way here? As well as the bountiful trio, corn, potatoes, sweet potatoes, have they too arrived?" Garrett made a concerted effort to refocus. He opened the door and invited them inside. The bald-headed bishop didn't hesitate to step in, while the three knights followed reluctantly, asking as they walked, "Bishop, what brings you here? Has he treated this injury before?" Now that Garrett says he might be able to, I naturally have to see. "Do you really believe he can heal it?" Garrett's methods are different from others. If he says he can, then I'll come and see. Back when Sir Balin injured his wrist, he had sought medical aid everywhere and even made substantial donations to the war god's temple, but despite numerous treatments, the bald-headed bishop could only inform him that the tendons were severed and there was nothing more to be done. Seeing that Knight leave, unable to wield his bow again, was difficult for the bald-headed bishop, so, upon hearing the possibility of a cure, even if prying into someone else's secrets was frowned upon, he shamelessly inserted himself into the situation. 5 people crowded in, 3 of them knights, and one who was as knightly as a knight, in a small room of about 20 square meters, making it feel like it was about to burst. To make matters worse, there were only 2 chairs, one of which had a broken leg. Glancing left and right, Garrett knew he needed the patient to sit on the intact chair for the examination. He gingerly sat on the broken one himself, while the others had to make do. However, they could. Garrett gathered his focus and began his inquiries. "Sir Balin? That's me. You injured your wrist 3 years ago? What's the current situation?" "Yes, injured my right wrist." As Garrett questioned, he discreetly observed the man. Judging by appearance alone, Balin seemed a good 7 or 8 years older than the other knights, weathered and rugged, with a scruffy beard and a weary countenance. His complexion was dull, his eyes tired. But when Garrett mentioned his name, there was a faint glimmer in his eyes. Glancing at Balin's torso, despite the 3-year-old injury, he still had a sturdy physique. His belly hadn't bulged, his left arm boasted a well-built bicep, while the muscles in his right arm visibly sagged him. The patient had kept up with exercise, a strong desire to recover. Garrett Nordmark, former emergency room physician, silently noted this in his mind, then extended his hand. "Let me see your right hand." Balin obediently extended his hand, palm up, resting it flat on the table. Garrett leaned in under the lamp's light to examine a scar on the wrist, a reddish wound that protruded like an earthworm on the skin. The bald-headed bishop's paw immediately reached out, about to point out the wound, but Garrett breathed a sigh of relief. "How does the wrist feel? Can't bend it inwards? But you can extend it outwards, right?" "How did you know?" Balin instinctively glanced to his side. Sir Flynn on his left and Sir Westlow on his right vehemently denied. "We didn't tell him." Garrett pursed his lips. He had wanted to ask further, but the bald-headed bishop intervened, placing his hand between Garrett and the patient, with an air of determination to get answers. "How did you know?" Rolling his eyes, Garrett attempted to cut through the bald-headed bishop's tirade, but unfortunately, he couldn't overpower him. He sighed and pointed at Balin's wrist to explain. "It's quite evident. He injured the inner side of the wrist, not the outer. The tendons on the inside control bending, so if the outside isn't hurt, of course he can extend it outwards." "Ah? Oh." The bald-headed bishop withdrew. Deflated. Balin cautiously asked, looking at his wrist. "Can it be treated?" Chapter 45. The gaze was all too familiar. Patients, family, no distinction of gender or age, status or rank. So many looked at him this way. Garrett almost blurted out, "I can heal," reflexively, but it transformed on the tip of his tongue into, "There's a possibility of healing." After stating the conclusion, Garrett immediately shifted back. Even though he sat in a chair against the wall, his back against the wall, there was no escape. Yet he instinctively tried to retreat further. In his previous life, when you said possibility, patients and families weren't satisfied. There'd likely be an inquisition. How likely is healing? How long will it take? How much will it cost? Eventually, it would end in complaints about the doctor's reluctance to give a definite answer. And if the temper wasn't good, it'd lead to a round of complaints. Even if these knights had good temperaments and didn't cause trouble, even if they shook him by the shoulders, he couldn't handle it. Garrett cautiously looked across. Contrary to his expectations, after a brief stupor, Knights Flynn and Sir Westlow immediately rejoiced. One of them reached out, grabbing Sir Balin's shoulder, shaking him vigorously. "It can be healed. It can be healed. Old Balin, did you hear that? It can be healed. You've consulted so many. It's been 3 years, 3 years." The two men shouted passionately. Their voices gradually lowered, becoming hoarse, almost like howls in the dark night. Sir Balin sat like a puppet, unresponsive, despite their attempts to shake him. After a while, with a sudden jolt, he stood up, shrugged off the two, and slightly bowed to Garrett. "Then please, heal him quickly." "Yes, quickly." Knights Flynn and Sir Westlow immediately understood. The three formed a half-circle, leaning forward, staring down at Garrett, almost as if they wanted to swallow him whole. Under their intense gazes, Garrett shrank back a bit more. "Not possible right now." "Why not? Didn't you say it can be healed?" Sir Balin's voice heightened instantly. Garrett sought help in a glance toward Knight Flynn, arguing softly. "I can't do it now. I'm missing something." Amidst the clamor inside and outside the room, Garrett's figure was engulfed. Sir Balin, Knight Flynn, Sir Westlow, everyone was clamoring. The bald bishop's voice was louder than anyone's. "Young Garrett, can you truly heal this injury? What's missing? Is it lacking the material for casting? If your healing art isn't strong enough, tell me how to do it. I'll take over." Expectant eyes once again focused on Garrett. Seeing no troublemakers or complainers, Garrett relaxed. He took a step forward, looked into the bishop's eyes, and answered loudly, "I'm 70% sure of healing alone, but to ensure afterward that the wrist remains flexible, capable of exerting force without harming elsewhere, I need to check my tools to know the certainty." "Can't you heal it now?" The bald bishop and Sir Balin seemed somewhat disappointed. Garrett pondered for a moment, grasped Sir Balin's arm, gesturing and explaining. It's like this, your arm has many muscles, each reliant on tendons, what you call tendons, that attach to bones. I reckon the tendon you broke is the radial flexor right here to here. He moved his fingers along Sir Balin's arm, pressed near the elbow on the forearm, slid downward, and then tapped the base of the palm. Then he drew a line across the scar on the right wrist. That's where it snapped. Tendon strength is significant. When it snaps, the entire muscle contracts. What I need to do is cut the skin, pull out the contracted muscle, stretch it back to its original position, and let the tendon heal. He tried to keep his explanation simple. As soon as he finished speaking, Sir Balin immediately stood up, exclaiming, "Why wait? Heal it now." Clang. A dagger landed on the table, gleaming coldly. Garrett, I need forceps, hemostats, sutures. This surgery might need to be done under a microscope. No microscope? Give me a magnifying glass at least. He choked on his words, caught between disbelief and disbelief. Before he could recover, the bald bishop questioned, I've tried this method before, but it didn't heal. Tried this method too? Garrett looked at him with new respect. Big guy, you're gutsy. Studied medicine for a few years? Dissected a few cadavers? Know how to cut without severing blood vessels, how to avoid cutting nerves. How do I explain this? Garrett fetched paper and pen, quickly sketching on the desk. Moments later, the ulna, radius, metacarpals were vividly depicted, with over a dozen muscle fibers attached to the bones. An illustration of the forearm muscles and bones was now on the paper. This was something he'd done countless times in his previous life. Making it not just detailed but clear was routine one-person drawing. For heads leaning in, the bald bishop found the room too dim and casually cast a spell, illuminating the entire room. Garrett, your mind's already bright enough. Not even 2 minutes passed, and a rough sketch was complete, Garrett murmured. Even those without medical knowledge do it like this. Slowing down his speech, beginning his explanation. See this on your arm? Besides muscles, there are veins and nerves. I'll explain nerves later. Anyway, injuring any of these makes the arm dysfunctional. You think cutting and pulling it out will heal it? The bald bishop nodded vigorously. Garrett turned to Sir Balin, frustrated. What good is just a knife? You think this is slaughtering a pig? Skinning a sheep? You cut, reach in, pull out the tendon, so a few stitches and that's it? I'm asking, if I cut your wrist, will it hurt? Will it move? We'll hold him down. Both Knight Flynn and Sir Westlow replied simultaneously. Garrett snorted, holding down. This is tendon surgery, not bone setting. I can endure without moving. Sir Balin shouted loudly. Garrett retorted. What use is your endurance? If you hold it too tight, I can't stretch the muscle. Each of you, one by one. He pointed to Flynn, Balin, and finally the outermost, Sir Westlow. The other day, during Sir Westlow's chest decompression, a knife barely pierced the chest, only with the help of Flynn's quick action. Each one of you is a knight. Me. Use a knife. None of you can even pierce. Sir Balin was speechless. Just then, a flash of light caught Garrett's eye. He turned to see the bald bishop swiftly snatch the sketch and stuff it into his robes. As Garrett looked over, the bishop winked at him openly with a mischievous smile. Chapter 46. What's this sketch for? Is it not considered theft if it's just a sketch? Or is it an outright theft? Garrett opened his mouth but decided not to argue with the bishop. He continued to roar at the Baron Knights. And even if I cut it open, how do I sew your muscles back together? With my hands. Why can't you use your hands? Garrett was speechless. He plopped back into his seat, took a few deep breaths, and couldn't help but question his life choices. Have I lost my ability to educate patients? In my past life, anyone would have understood at this point, and the bald bishop seemed to get it. Why are these knights still? Forget it, a roughneck's comprehension shouldn't be compared to a spellcaster's. How do I explain this? Should I perform surgery on the spot? Great idea. Garrett's eyes lit up. He composed himself, stood up calmly, and smiled at the barren night. "How about this? I'll find a pig's leg or a lamb's leg and cut it here. Then you'll understand how the treatment is done, Your Grace. Could you wait for me a moment? Where will you find a pig's leg at this hour?" The bald bishop furrowed his brow after a brief thought. He took charge and grabbed Garrett, saying, "Never mind. Come with me. Wait. My surgical knife. Knife!" The bald bishop strode ahead swiftly. Garrett was dragged along, panting and breathless. He swung the surgical instruments in one hand, and finally, Sir Flynn Knight, unable to stand it, rushed forward and took the surgery kit from him. As they followed the bishop, the surroundings grew brighter and livelier eventually. They arrived at a brightly lit, smoke-filled tavern with dozens of men laughing and shouting inside. The bald bishop barged in and shouted, "Old man, do you have a pig's leg? There's half a leg left." A distant voice replied from behind the counter, "Roast it for you? I want it raw. Take me to the kitchen." The bishop bellowed. He marched through the crowd, followed by the three knights, and the drinkers in the bar parted like the red cigarette. A young lad found himself smoothly mingling in, not stopped at the kitchen door. The kitchen was bustling. A head chef and a few assistants were rushing around like they had speed boosts. The bald bishop made a beeline for the meat counter, grabbed a pig's leg, inspected it, then turned to Garrett asking, "Can we use this? Put down my leg." A furious roar came from the other side. The head chef lunged forward with a knife but stopped just in time. "Why, Your Grace?" The bald bishop nodded absent-mindedly, still staring at Garrett. Garrett extended his neck to examine the pig's leg and found both ends of the big bone joints already cut off. He shook his head immediately. The bald bishop promptly put down the pig's leg. "Do you have a lamb's leg?" "No." The bald bishop frowned. The head chef peeked, then snatched the pig's leg and dashed away as if afraid it would be snatched. The bald bishop, ignoring the commotion, pondered for a moment. "Can we use a live one? Will a live one do?" Garrett hadn't caught on yet and instinctively replied. The bald bishop nodded, stood up, and within moments, to Garrett's astonished gaze, he brought in a bleeding live lamb and tossed it onto the counter. "Can we use this? Your Grace, you're really getting it live." Garrett was dumbfounded, seeing his lack of response. The bald bishop coughed and asked again, "Can we use this?" Yeah. Garrett snapped back to reality and hurriedly answered, But what?" Garrett reached out and the panicked lamb almost kicked his hand. He immediately pulled back, turned to the bishop, and shrugged helplessly. "That's it. You bring in a live thing, don't even sedate it. How am I supposed to operate? Even local anesthesia would do." The bald bishop chuckled. He bowed his head in a prayer for a moment and snapped his fingers. In an instant, white beams of light bound the live lamb to the counter. Its legs were up, clearly in distress but unable to make a sound. Operating like this feels more comfortable." Garrett sighed contentedly. Positioned in front of the counter looking around, he said, "Uncle Flynn, please pass me the box. Uncle Silo, you stand on the left for a clearer view. No need to tiptoe." "Your Grace, it's a bit dark here. Could you please cast an illuminating spell?" At this point, the tavern owner sneaked in with the head chef, both peeking at the bald bishop and the lamb he brought. However, to their surprise, the bald bishop merely stood aside, and it was Garrett who stood steadily at the counter, opening a wooden box and picking up the surgical knife as soon as the knife was in hand. Garrett exuded an air of decisiveness, just like the hundreds of surgeries he'd performed and supervised as a doctor in his past life. He swiftly began, giving orders before the treatment. "Shave the surrounding fur. Baron, don't laugh. When the time comes, if we need to shave, you'd better find a razor yourself, then make an incision on the skin, not too deep." As he spoke, the tip of the knife had already pierced the skin of the lamb's leg, effortlessly making a cut. The skin parted, the blood seemed to freeze for a moment, and only a thin line of blood appeared. "Wow." A low murmur echoed in the kitchen. The bar owner and the assisting chef, mouths agape, watched as the bald bishop commanded every action, tying the lamb and casting spells. The bar owner even nudged the chef. "Hey, who's this young guy? Don't speak." The chef snapped back without hesitation, fixated on Garrett's knife movements. His knife skills are amazing. He cuts without harming the flesh, and there's hardly any bleeding. Impressive. Garrett, however, wasn't entirely satisfied. Truthfully, he was more familiar with human skin. A single cut in his expertise would only graze the skin without injuring the underlying tissue. He dissected rats and rabbits in his past. Not much experience with lambs, he looked at the bloodstains on the knife and sighed softly. This knife isn't fast enough. Baron, if the knife were a bit faster, when I cut your wrist, the bleeding could have been halved. I'll go find a knife. Baron Knight replied promptly. Garrett sighed. Not just any knife will do, it needs to be the shape I want. Next, pull the skin to the sides to minimize damage. Your Grace, could you please hold this hook? He gave the order, and the bald bishop obediently took the hook and pulled backward. Garrett kept his eyes partly on the hook, never stopping his hands. Pull back a bit more, put some more strength into it. Good, just like that, hold steady. The head chef and the bar owner were speechless. The bald bishop remained silent, focusing on pulling the hook. Chapter 47. Amidst all eyes, the bald bishop strained to hook onto something, his body arched backward, head stretching forward just to get a clearer view of Garrett's every move, contorting into a peculiar C shape. Sir Westlow couldn't bear it. Stepping forward to grab the hook and hearing Garrett shout, "Get me some thin needles. Toothpicks will do." Garrett meticulously separated each muscle section on the leg of a sheep, placing toothpicks between them as markers. Then he called everyone over, pointing at the leg. "Baron, look here, there are numerous muscles. The one on your arm, this is one of them." He turned the blade and made a quick flick. With a snap, the tendon broke, the muscle recoiling upwards as the silvery tendon disappeared within the muscle mass. "Now, we have to find it again." Garrett tilted his head, gestured at the sheep's leg. That gesture was quite clear. "Dig it out." Baron Knight, Flynn Knight, and Sir Westlow. The bald bishop leaned in, looked up and down, sleeves rolled up, and forcibly dug into the separated muscles. After much struggle, his hands bloody, he actually found the retracted tendon, gripping it with his fingernails and pulling. Oops. It slipped. Oops. Slipped again. The third time, the bald bishop, learning from his mistake, grabbed the muscle with both fingernails, veins on his wrist bulging, and with a tug he made a hole in the perfectly good leg of lamb. Hey, stop. Garrett couldn't watch anymore. "Your Eminence, we can't use brute force here. We need proper tools. Someone, get a set of forceps." No forceps? "Fine, bring 2 narrow flat iron rods and more hooks." "Go fetch." The bald bishop and several knights issued orders simultaneously. The kitchen immediately bustled, and after half a cup of tea's time, the items Garrett requested were brought in. Despite the unevenness of the long iron rods and the crude bent hooks made by the knights, Garrett had to resign himself. This will have to do. He carefully parted the muscle, hooked onto it, and signaled the 2 knights to pull in opposite directions. From the depths, they found the torn tendon, squeezing it tight with 2 narrow, flat iron rods, and calling Baron Knight, "Pull. Pull backward." Baron Knight strained, pulling the lamb's leg with a squeaky sound, inch by inch, preventing the muscle from tearing open again. As the torn tendon met its other end, Garrett immediately commanded, "All right. Right here, hold it steady, don't move. Your Eminence, please cast a healing spell to join the tendon ends." White light descended. A group of people crowded around, witnessing the tendon that had been cut by a surgical blade miraculously fuse back together. "So this is how it's done. So much clearer this way. Old Baron, see, your tendons could be joined like this too. Little Garrett, you're amazing." The knights exclaimed in awe. The bald bishop, seizing the opportunity, healed the sheep completely, releasing its divine hold, and the animal dashed away with a slight limp. "Garrett, why's it still limping?" "That's why I said we need proper tools." "What do you need?" the bald bishop asked solemnly. Garrett's eyes lit up. The surgical instruments Lin, the necromancer, had given him were better than nothing. The blades were wavy, the scissors could barely trim flowers, there was only one hook. And what about hemostatic forceps? What were those? In terms of variety and precision, Garrett, drawing from his experiences in the 21st century, couldn't quite accept it, but if he had to get someone to craft them, Garrett, upon considering his wallet, felt apprehensive initially. He planned to save up bit by bit, but lo and behold, the temple took the initiative. The temple was loaded. Had a strong backing. Take from the rich to equip the surgery. Don't be polite with the wealthy. A few words won't explain it. He looked expectantly at the bald bishop. "How about I go home and draw it for you?" After about a meal's worth of time, the bald bishop, astonished, stared at a large sheet of paper covered with various surgical instruments, densely annotated. What's this? The handle of a surgical knife. This? A circular blade. This is a curved blade, a triangular blade, various sizes, and this? Hemostatic forceps. Why are two of them drawn the same? Oh, that's not hemostatic forceps, it's a needle holder. These are fine tissue forceps, large and small flat-nosed forceps. This is a mosquito forceps. This is a pointed mosquito forceps. This is a serrated scissors, a curved slanting scissors. A straight slanting scissors. These are large, medium, and small curves. By the way, mosquito forceps, pointed mosquito forceps, fine tissue forceps, and hemostatic forceps are quite small. It's best to have a jeweler make them. This many? The bald bishop was speechless. Garrett sighed. These are just what's urgently needed to have a complete set. There's still a long way to go. Not a single surgical procedure arrived without a cart brimming with dozens of instruments, making it impossible to start. Absolutely no sense of security. Baron Knight glanced at the patterns on the paper, then at his own wrist injury. Gradually bowing his head, his expression shifted from bright to dull, and finally he clenched his fist tightly. Garrett had been watching his expressions. This conflicted, wavering, and finally determined look was something he'd seen countless times in his past life. Families in financial straits, deciding whether to make sacrifices, sell everything they had. Hoping for a chance at healing, they always hesitated like this, pacing in emergency rooms, at payment counters, constantly in turmoil in the waiting halls. Back then, he couldn't do much. 365 days a year, dozens or hundreds of patients a day. Among them were always a few in economic distress, but this time, finally, he could do something. Garrett promptly laid a hand on Baron Knight's shoulder. Tilting his head up, he confidently addressed the bald bishop. Your Eminence, could you trouble yourself to make this set of instruments? Once it's done, I'll take Baron Knight to the temple to complete the treatment. I can also write up detailed notes on these diagrams and the entire treatment process. The bald bishop's furrowed brow gradually relaxed. He shook his head deliberately. Just this much. Isn't this enough? Garrett was brimming with confidence. Your Eminence, among the followers of the War God's temple, there are many warriors, right? How many have old injuries that couldn't be healed? I don't know, but you surely do, right? The bald bishop nodded lightly. Indeed, among those he knew, there were about a dozen higher-level retired warriors due to old injuries. These warriors, quite a few of them have money, right? Imagine if they knew old injuries could be treated, that they could return to the battlefield. What would they be willing to do for the temple? Other temples can't heal them. Only the War God's temple can. Are you saying only the War God's temple? The bald bishop was moved. Garrett shrugged. I, for one, have no intention of teaching at the Spring Goddess's temple. As for the Church of the God of Nature, his identity as a prophet, there was a sham, and he couldn't run away from it fast enough. The bald bishop pondered. The more he thought, the more feasible this proposition seemed. He looked at Garrett and burst into laughter. You rascal. Teach us how to heal, and you're already planning to earn a set of knives for free. Can you say no? Garrett chuckled. The bald bishop slapped his shoulder. Can I even say no? Odon hit me. If you break something, no one's going to operate. Chapter 48. The night, Baron Chevalier left with profuse thanks. Even though Garrett hadn't cured him, hadn't even started the treatment, the effort he'd put in was genuinely appreciated. Garrett didn't pay much heed to the gratitude before the night left. He held his hand, repeatedly cautioning, stop smoking. When you go back, please, no more smoking. Smoking makes it harder for wounds to heal. Why? Just trust me. Garrett pushed him out. Tobacco, nicotine, they caused blood vessel spasms, making wounds hard to heal, especially post-limb reattachment. Fingers were prone to necrosis, even though what the knight needed was a wrist tendon operation. Minimizing any impact was still beneficial, but do you really want me to explain what nicotine is? Thanks, but no, just listen to me. Seeing off the guest, Garrett returned to his desk, starting his drafts. Making a fortune was indeed delightful. With 2,000 sheets of paper at home, he could write whatever he wanted without worry, tearing one sheet after another. No more cramped writing. He organized his thoughts, writing the medical history first, then dipped his pen in ink and continued. Anesthesia, hemostasis, disinfection, surgery, anesthesia. Inquire at the Temple of the God of War for available divine magic. If none, consult the apothecary. Mandrake, aconitum, thornapple. Check for corresponding magic. Hemostasis, tourniquet, hemostatic forceps, divine magic for hemostasis, disinfection, hand washing, prepare strong alcohol, preheat and disinfect all instruments and clothes. Garrett questioned the term instruments. Swearing to Hippocrates, he really hadn't exaggerated. He only had 2 hemostatic forceps prepared and just 3 tissue forceps. What if there was an accident and the instruments got contaminated? How to proceed? Divine light for disinfection? Flame disinfection? If only mage hands could replace tissue forceps, but that wasn't tangible, contamination might not be an issue. Well, time to buckle down and learn more magic. He reviewed the vocabulary he transcribed yesterday and today, then laid down to sleep. The next morning, he went to the city guard's barracks, fetched his horse, mounted up, and rode straight to the mage tower. The horse was borrowed from the city guards, or rather, Captain Flynn did him a favor and allocated it for his use. He'd leave it at the stable while at the mage tower, paying the gatekeeper 5 silver coins per month, and retrieve it when back in the city. This saved him time to copy an extra 20 pages of words every day. Money was coming in. He could afford to keep a horse, and his living standard was rising. His monthly salary increased from 5 silver coins to 15 silver coins, with a lump sum of 10 gold coins, so he didn't have to worry about copying books in the short term. Garrett took a bite of cheese-filled bread, then savored some cured meat, feeling content. After this lunch, he needed to continue copying the dictionary. Finish copying it, then translate the magic book, see what kind of magic might be useful for surgeries. Just when he was thinking about it joyfully, the door behind him creaked open. Garrett turned and saw a young boy bounding inside. Judging by his attire, he seemed to be from a wealthy family. Collared shirt, riding breeches, leather boots, velvet coat adorned with shiny silver buttons. When the boy noticed Garrett looking, he slowed down, put on a serious face, and crossed his arms. Despite being barely 10 years old, he exuded an unexpectedly mature demeanor that almost made Garrett laugh. Newcomer? Oh, no book copying today. Not sure how long this kid's staying. If he's around here for a while, I'll have to find another way to copy books. Thankfully, I've put away everything during lunch. Garrett quickly thought and casually greeted, "Hello?" As he finished, he looked at the person following the boy and immediately stood up. Master Elliot. Master Elliot nodded at Garrett and turned to leave. The boy watched him depart and suddenly dashed towards Garrett, making a funny face at him. Who are you? I'm the boy. Clearly didn't wait for Garrett's response. After pulling a face, he darted into a corner, rummaging through Garrett's bag. After a few flips, he pulled out a stack of papers, rustling through them. What are you doing? Wow, you're copying books. Shoo! Garrett hurriedly hushed him. He wanted to reach out but feared tearing the papers, so he hesitated suddenly. He turned around and outside the library, Master Elliot happened to glance over, exchanging a look with Garrett, then casually walked away. Garrett felt a bit relieved back in the room. The boy had already started giggling, shaking a few papers vigorously, at times holding them up, at times hiding them behind his back. He ran around the room. You're copying books? You're in trouble. Mr. Elliot said you're only allowed to read, not copy. The papers weren't that sturdy to begin with, and with the boy shaking them back and forth, one tore apart. Garrett got anxious. Hey, give that back. He moved to grab it, but the boy dodged left and right, giggling, then swiftly slid under the table. Before Garrett could bend down, the child shouted, You dare try and take it back? Someone's secretly copying books. Mr. Elliot. Mr. Elliot. The child's voice was sharp and loud, echoing throughout the lower levels of the mage tower. Garrett couldn't stop it in time. Just as he was about to cover the boy's mouth, outside the library, a dignified voice spoke up. What's going on? Garrett stopped, turning around outside. Elliot had bowed respectfully. Master! Oh no! Caught red-handed by the head honcho, Garrett inwardly sighed in distress. But all he could do was also bow. Respected master. What's the commotion? Magician Gelman stepped in, still clad in that tight red robe, his eyes glistening. With just a glance, several scattered papers floated up and flew into his hand. Can't escape. I was planning to show some results, then ask for help from someone. But it's only been 2.5 days. Can he tell what I've been doing in just 2.5 days? Can I impress this magician? Or perhaps, is it still possible for me to seek refuge with a necromancer? Might I be hit by a fireball spell? No, probably not. This is a library after all. Fire hazards. Garrett's mind raced chaotically. His heart pounded, breaths quickened one after another, and he felt a cold sweat forming on his back. He was surprised he had the time to think about these things. Stepping forward, he stood tall, meeting Magician Gelman's gaze squarely, speaking calmly to defend himself. I'm not just copying from the book. I'm organizing and summarizing for easier memorization. But you're still copying. The boy shouted. Magician Gelman, however, raised a hand to stop his argument with a furrowed brow. He glanced over a few papers, then suddenly said, "What about the rest? Bring them out." Chapter 49. He's secretly copying. The boy shouted loudly, seeing Magician Gelman ignoring him. He jumped forcefully, his face flushed with anger. "Fine! You don't care about this. I'll tell my grandpa. Do you folks at the Magic Tower even want to pass this year's assessment? Who's this cheeky kid? Such an attitude. Could he be a second-generation mage? No, maybe even third?" Garrett quickly bent down, took out all the papers from his backpack, and tidied them a bit before handing them over. Magician Gelman flipped through them one by one, then suddenly snorted and slammed the papers down in front of Garrett. "I asked you to organize, and this is how you organize? Oh. Huh. When did you ask me to copy?" Garrett was taken aback, but the magician's words clearly absolved him of the responsibility of secretly copying books, which was hugely advantageous. Garrett wasn't stupid, so he immediately apologized. "It was my carelessness. You haven't even sorted uppercase and lowercase letters. The alphabet is a mess. Redo it." "Oh. Okay." Garrett was ecstatic, hastily agreeing. The magician paid him no more attention, walking away with hands behind his back. After a couple of steps, he threw down a second command. "Copy 2 books. Keep one for yourself. Hand them in within half a month." "Yes," Garrett loudly responded. He could copy books now, openly. Fantastic. Dictionaries are indeed useful. I've always said, anyone learning a new language can't resist the charm of a dictionary. You've learned the magical script, but don't need to study Elvish or Dragon language. Wait, are those languages even present in this world? He gathered his thoughts, quickly catching up and respectfully following the magician. Gelman suddenly stopped after a few steps and told his apprentice, "Keep an eye on him." His tone had a slight edge. Elliot hurriedly agreed. Gelman shook his head and left on the elevator without another word. Elliot kept up his respectful stance until his teacher's figure disappeared, then turned to look at Garrett. "Sorry for causing you trouble." Garrett apologized quickly. When the kid was yelling earlier, Elliot pretended not to notice, walking away on his own. Though Garrett had seen it all clearly in the library now, upon reflection, Elliot's deliberate leniency was clearly noticed by Magician Gelman. Garrett felt a bit sorry for him. With Garrett's apology, Elliot's demeanor softened a bit. He picked up the papers and flipped through them, then suddenly raised his hand and patted Garrett on the back. "You've got some luck." "Yeah." Garrett relaxed and smiled, still a bit shaken. Elliot glanced at the boy beside him and shook his head. "You've hit the right time, you know? The Magic Council assesses all the magic towers every year, counting how many mage apprentices are trained and if there are any improvements in new magic. If the scores are low, the funding is reduced, and the next year becomes a tight one, with the assessment coming up in June and the research not going well. This little thing is actually quite interesting and might be able to scrape through. Thank goodness. Copying from the dictionary was indeed useful." Garrett breathed a sigh of relief, his shoulders slumping immediately. Magician Elliot flipped through 2 more pages of the papers, then suddenly sighed heavily. "The teacher told me to watch over you." Sigh. Teaching someone who doesn't even know the alphabet is such a hassle. "I'm rushing off to do an experiment, so here's the deal." He muttered a few words, then suddenly raised his hand, pointing at Garrett's forehead. A chilly light flashed, and Garrett felt his head swelling as if it had Been stuffed with countless things all at once. Elliot waved. You study on your own. I'm outta here. Garrett suddenly turned around. The pages spread out on the table, the magical script he hadn't memorized or learned at all. Every word's meaning was crystal clear at that moment. Level 1 magic. Language proficiency? Garrett flashed this phrase in his mind. In his past life, he'd seen this spell in web novels and games, seeming to have a time limit, depending on the mage's level for its duration. So, when the time's up, does it all vanish instantly? Without time to express gratitude, Garrett hurriedly transcribed all the letters in order onto a sheet of paper. By the time he turned around, Elliot was already far away, walking hurriedly. Thank you. Garrett shouted against the door frame. He lunged at the bookshelf, quickly pulling out Basic Meditation. Meditation is a fundamental for mages. The sooner, the better. While the language proficiency is still effective, memorizing this book now and being able to practice it properly at home is the right thing to do. He flipped through the first few pages and relaxed a bit. Meditation is a lifelong pursuit for mages. Hella Ural, Magic History, Year 382. Thank goodness, I can understand it. This book is written in magical script, not some strange characters I'd need to decipher. I know every single word on these pages. The author of this book is really kind. Garrett focused, reading through the text. Whether it was written for new entrants or the author's naturally friendly demeanor, Basic Meditation was extremely simple and easy to understand. It started by defining the purpose of meditation. Meditation is a method for mages to refine their mental power, to then observe the world through their mental power, a way to reflect the world. Every word is recognizable, every phrase is understandable, but put together. What is mental power? My focus? Ability to think? The activity level of brainwaves? Invisible, intangible, would getting an EEG help? Or maybe Musk's brain-machine interface can extend mental power beyond the body. Or perhaps it's not brainwaves but a neural magnetic field. Shaking off these thoughts, Garrett calmly started reading. Time was limited and he didn't know if he'd have time to copy, so he had to read and memorize simultaneously. After going through it once, then a second time, halfway through the book, his mind suddenly blurred, and then the text in the book turned into distorted patterns, occasionally interspersed with a few familiar words. The spell's duration ended, over, immediately erased, not a speck of memory left. Garrett sighed in frustration. He spread out a new blank sheet, turned back to the first page of Basic Meditation, and with the help of illustrations and a few scattered words on the page, he began to write from memory the meaning of meditation, what meditation is. How to start meditation, calming one's mind, entering a state between sleep and wakefulness, focusing first and then expanding. How to use mental power to touch the world, what one might feel during initial meditation, and what taboos exist. Line by line, page by page, unconsciously, a pile of papers filled with words accumulated on Garrett's left side, an unexpected gain. Tonight, I'll attempt meditation for the first time. The world of magic, here I come. Chapter 50. On his way home, excitement enveloped Garrett. He even braved the night to fetch a few buckets of water, split firewood, took a proper hot bath, using up half of the stored wood at home. Ancient life was quite a hassle if only there was running water. A water heater, or heck, if he knew magic, he could just use it to heat bathing water directly. Sigh, even to elevate his living standards, he needed to become a mage apprentice quickly. Garrett sighed while soaking in the tub. Regardless of the hassle, bathing was necessary to enhance the success rate of meditation. Bathing and changing were essential processes. He cleaned himself up, climbed into bed, and sat cross-legged. This body's flexibility is an issue. At just 16, he couldn't manage to cross his left leg over his right leg over left, the proper lotus position. Even though Basic Meditation doesn't mention sitting in the lotus position. As a Chinese person, not trying this posture before starting meditation always felt unsettling, like a -5, -5, -5 in success rate. Garrett tried crossing his left leg over his right, struggling repeatedly, but to no avail. He attempted relaxing his feet, forming a loose quadrilateral shape, but he couldn't maintain balance. Trying to straighten his legs into a triangular shape resulted in him tipping backward with no other choice. He collapsed onto the bed, rolled against the wall, propped himself up, legs extended, comfortable now, closing his eyes, clearing his mind. Inhale. Exhale. Imagine being in total darkness, shutting off sight, sound, smell. Following the steps outlined in Basic Meditation, Garrett mentally prepared himself quiet down. Be still, relaxed, serene. Perhaps due to self-hypnosis or maybe a result of crossing into this world, he seemed to have gained some boost for learning magic when he focused his mind, much like casting a healing spell. There seemed to be an actual light in the darkness. What's this? Neither above nor below, left nor right, inside nor outside this is. Me. Garrett trembled violently, nearly losing the current state of clarity. He shut his eyes, struggling to calm himself for a while before finally steadying his mind once more into meditation, and then the next step. According to basic meditation, to train mental power, one needed to construct a virtual self. Then, draw in external forces, steadily solidifying this self. After reaching a certain strength, mental power could be emitted, starting to influence the external world. At this thought, the pinpoint of light in the darkness began to change, following the illustrations in basic meditation. A small figure with limbs, a head, facial features, muscles, and flowing blood depicted by points of light and lines, silently stood in the void in the next moment. Like a stone dropped in water, concentric ripples emanated from the light figure, spreading into the darkness and quietly reverberating back with each feedback. The light-formed figure became a bit more solid. Is this me? Is this illusory light figure my mental power? Garrett felt a bit bewildered, as if some connection informed him. Yes, this is you. This is your mental power. It condenses based on your physical form, fluctuates with your will, and when it becomes strong enough, it can nurture the physical body and intervene in the present world. But this light figure, the details are off. Muscles are off. Blood flow isn't right. No separation between arteries and veins. No depiction of left atrium, left ventricle, right atrium, right ventricle, or blood ejection direction. Nerves, lymphatic system, capillaries. None of these are depicted. Garrett grew irritated. The illustrations in basic meditation were too crude, missing many details, and depicting many things inaccurately. Stake his honor as a medical student. He could easily find 7 or 8, even a dozen errors. This won't do. Garrett focused his energy, starting to recall anatomical diagrams from his previous life unknowingly. The light-formed figure began to change with his recollections. 206 bones, linked from bottom to top via over 300 joints, firmly and flexibly connected. 640 muscles, attaching to bones via tendons or directly connected to other muscles. The heart beat powerfully, pumping blood into arteries, recovering it through capillaries, then returning it to the heart through veins. Nervous system, respiratory system, digestive, urinary, endocrine, lymphatic, immune, reproductive. In the end, the skin covered everything. Hair grew, nails emerged. Every detail, even if he hadn't personally dissected or treated, he had studied, drawn, and memorized countless times. At this moment, these memories were crystal clear. It's just like this, even in an alternate world, the structure of human beings must be like this, Garrett thought firmly. He had healed patients himself, opened abdomens, stopped bleeding at the liver, cut into the trachea, pierced the chest cavity. Every successful treatment assured him that his understanding was not wrong. When he snapped out of it, the light-formed figure in the void had become infinitely more refined than the illustrations. Upon closer inspection, it was exactly like the human anatomy he had studied in his previous life. The heart made of white light beat strongly, thump, 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 one after the other with each beat. An intangible halo emanated at this newly constructed figure. Its emitted halo was more than twice as powerful as before. Is that so? Does mental power need to closely align with the body to resonate maximally, receive support, and simultaneously provide feedback to the body? Garrett wasn't sure, but he had an inexplicable feeling. His mental power was significantly stronger than when he first constructed it, so the next thing to attempt would be to perceive this world with mental power. How would the world appear to his mental power? Following basic meditation's instructions, Garrett actively controlled the ripples emitted by the light-formed figure, extending them outward. Then, under the perception of mental power, the entire world changed. Steady, solid power bearing this world. Light, ethereal power, free and joyful, never resting for a moment, fiery, restless power, unconstrained yet bringing the greatest force, gentle, dense power, quiet and nourishing, silently spreading vitality. Earth, water, fire, wind? The four major elements? Garrett was extremely surprised with his fluctuating emotions. The light-formed figure in his meditation environment shook violently again, almost dissipating. This is the world perceived by my mental power? After the initial shock, Garrett was ecstatic. According to basic meditation, being able to faintly sense the four major elements means my mental power has reached the level of a mage apprentice? From today onwards, can I start deciphering magic?